No, I come in early. You don't have to do anything.
Language. So if they ever encounter someone who's deaf, they can communicate with them. Making sure that police don't have transportation stops, and we can assign that to another department. And most importantly, we have to make sure that both police officers and residents as a whole have access to mental health care. I understand the role of a police officer is very dangerous and very traumatic. And I also understand that those who have interacted with the police may have traumatic experiences too. Instead of trying to pit one against each other, we should move towards a path in which we don't need police because we have a safe city. We have a city where everyone is fed, everyone has clothing, and everyone has a place to live. And so I support those measures, and I support the ballot measure for the Police Review Board on this November election. And the reason why is because it gives the power of this board to call in police officers to testify. And that is so important. It's important to hear the prospects of everyone's decisions. And so that's the main thing that I support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Wayne.
Let's just start with some facts. In Berkeley, we spend about $20 million more on policing than we spend on housing and homelessness. 9 of the top 10 highest paid employees in city government are police officers. And when you look at the numbers, the city's own estimates show that if we spend about $30 million more on homelessness, we could put every single person experiencing homelessness in a permanent supportive housing, every single person. So if we just switch the budget for the police department in housing and homelessness, we would be 2/3 of the way towards housing every single unhoused person in the city of Berkeley. And there's an incredible amount of evidence. As a former law and economics professor, I can tell you, I've looked at the research, that giving people housing, giving people economic security is one of the most important crime prevention measures we can undertake as a city. So I think at a minimum, we should be switching the police budget and the budget for housing and homelessness, allocating those funds towards mental health services, permanent supportive housing, which is the best and most evidence-based model for addressing homelessness. And not only will we get people off the streets and solve the human rights crisis that's unfolding in our city, but we will reduce crime. Over the long term, what we need to do is shift the culture of our police department away from military training, aggression, bullying, arresting, and incarcerating people towards public safety. So under our administration, every officer will be assessed and evaluated not by how many perps they put in jail, but by how kind they are to our people. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Uber holds its drivers more accountable than police forces hold their officers accountable. That's got to change. They need to take community feedback. They need to understand their role in protecting children.
Thank you, Wayne. Next up, Jesse.
Well, I've consistently been an advocate for accountability and oversight of our police department. I was proud to co-author Measure II on the Berkeley ballot to create an independent police accountability board. I urge you to vote yes. And I'm also proud to have led the effort on the Berkeley City Council to implement first in the nation reforms to our approach to public safety, looking at moving traffic stops out of our police department into a new Department of Transportation, and looking at moving money out of our police department budget to address our mental health crisis, expand homeless services, invest in violence prevention and community policing. Our police department budget accounts for roughly 40% of our general fund. That number is going to increase to 50% unless we rein in those costs and invest in alternatives. Our cops need to be focused on violent and serious crime, not focused on mental health response or being social service workers. And this will ensure that our police have the ability to respond more quickly to calls for service and to keep our community safer. I think we need to focus on community policing, getting police officers out of their cars, walking beats, building relationships with neighbors and businesses. But we do need police. We need a trained police. We need a police that has proper civilian oversight, and we need a police force that reflects our community's values. That is my focus, making sure that safety is achieved, not just for people in the hills, but people throughout the entire city. We need to ensure that we can provide a safe community for everyone.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on to question number 2 in the order again. We're switching it up. Wayne, Jesse, and Aidan. So this question has to do with the changes that are happening at North Berkeley BART. And this is also addresses on some level Ashby BART and even El Cerrito BART, because those of us in Thousand Oaks are affected by all of those issues. So specifically, we're in the stages of deciding how that development is going to be happening. So the question is a general one. What would you personally like to see happen with North Berkeley BART? There's lots of sort of sub questions here, but I think that's just the best way to frame it. So starting with Wayne.
Yeah, I mean, I think first let's just set out that my understanding is the city council has already approved a 4-story development. BART board of directors either has already approved or is about to approve a specific project. So to a certain extent, this is just retrospective. We don't have a lot of control over this as mayoral candidates. What I will say is I believe we have to build. You know, I am kind of the pro-housing candidate in this race relative to Jesse. I believe in zoning reform. I believe in streamlining our building code. Our zoning ordinance is a 449-page monstrosity. It makes it difficult for grandmothers to build ADUs. And frankly, when zoning is so difficult, when the planning department makes it so difficult, it's actually not big corporate developers that are hindered most. It's small landlords. It's a grandmother who's trying to build the ADU in the backyard. But on the specific question of what I would do at North Berkeley BART and Ashby BART is, I'm not sure that we would get to a different outcome than what we've gotten to under my administration. The difference would be the process. As a grassroots organizer, I believe deeply in community feedback. I know that from a political perspective, regardless of what your point of view is, if you don't give everyone a voice and give everyone a stake in the future we're trying to build together, you're not going to be able to move forward, right? This is something I learned from Michelle Obama 20 years ago at the University of Chicago when we were organizing in the public housing project. So I do think we need build. The specifics have to be part of a negotiated process where everyone feels like they've got a voice and everyone feels like they've got a stake in the future of Berkeley.
Thank you very much. Next up, Jesse.
Well, I don't know if Mr. Hsiung is aware, but we have not yet decided what will be built at the North Berkeley BART station. There is a community process going on right now. We appointed a community advisory group. Our intention is to engage everyone in our community to help shape the vision for development at these BART stations. And I do support creating hundreds of homes at the North Berkeley BART station, but a project that is contextual to the residential neighborhood and making sure that people can get to and from the BART station. If we are going to displace some of the parking, we need to make sure that we have transit access, we have shuttles, and we can make our streets safer so that people can get to and from the BART station. I'm very keenly aware that residents in your neighborhood may have to drive to the BART station because transit service is not great. And so we have to make sure while we're building housing at the BART station that we are addressing the issues of access, which is important to not only advance our climate goals, but also important for our residents. So I also just want to address a couple of other points Mr. Hsiung made, which were not correct. We are working to streamline our permitting process. In fact, there's a process going on right now to update our zoning code. We have implemented customer service improvements in our planning department, and we're moving permitting online. And that's something I want to continue to expand upon. And I think that the North Berkeley process and the Ashby process need to be done in a way that is inclusive, making sure the neighbors around the BART station are involved, making sure that we're engaging other stakeholders throughout the city. That is the process that we've laid out jointly with BART. No decision's been made, and I look forward to your input and participation in that process.
Thank you. Aidan?
Yes, thank you for this question. I'm not going to get a back and forth with the other candidates, but I will say that I agree with a lot of what Jesse had just said. Accessibility, inclusivity, these are all things that are fundamental to my core belief system. If you allow me to elaborate on what I mean by those things, by accessibility, I want to make public transportation an investment and a higher priority to support local and regional efforts to increase our connectivity. There are so many people who are transit dependent in our city. We have to make sure that, like Jesse said, they do get to and from. And so that's why I support deploying non-petroleum powered buses, making sure that people have access to mass transit, whether they're parked in their neighborhoods or parked on BART stations. When it comes to housing on BART, I'm also open to the community process. I do agree that we need inclusive neighborhoods. To expand on that, I believe that we could have self-help and community action through these neighborhood centers next to BART stations. They can provide well-funded legal aid, alternative dispute resolution. There are so many things that we can do, including voluntary shared housing arrangements. And we have to increase commuter subsidies for transportation scarce neighborhoods in Berkeley. and as well as make free and accessible transportation for all visitors, regardless of their abilities. I believe we can have farmers markets, mental health care, and even local startups at these BART stations. The possibility is endless, and it all starts with you, how you want to design your own neighborhood. And as mayor, I'll support you no matter what.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for being so cognizant of our time constraints. So third question, the order will be Jesse, Aidan, and then Wayne. Hope you're okay with my using first names. Okay. The next question is sort of the larger issue around homelessness, houselessness in the city of Berkeley. You know, this has been a big issue going on, and now we're in a pandemic where we're seeing housing really not only become worse in some ways, but also just fluctuating in ways that we weren't expecting. So the question is, what specific measures do you believe the city of Berkeley should take with the available funds and staff resources over the next few years, what to do in the future to reduce the number of individuals living on the street?
Well, despite the fact that homelessness has increased by 43% in Alameda County, it actually increased by 13% in the city of Berkeley over the past 2 years. And that is because of the programs that we had launched under my administration to prevent homelessness. The more we can prevent new people from becoming homeless, the more we can focus our resources on those people who are unsheltered and get them off the streets and get them into permanent housing. I wrote, and I'm proud that the voters of Berkeley supported Measure P, which provides $8.5 million a year. This is a tax on the highest value properties in the city of Berkeley to help support our homeless response. We're funding expanded public health services, mental health services, shelter, and permanent housing subsidies. And ultimately, housing is the solution to homelessness. And sadly, we do not have enough homes in the city of Berkeley or even regionally to address the growing need on our streets. And so we need to not only work to buy buildings, buy hotels, master lease properties, provide rental subsidies, but work with our neighboring cities and work with the County of Alameda and the state of California to expand our capacity of permanent supportive housing. I'm already working with Mayor Schaaf, who's endorsed me, and many other mayors on a countywide plan to address our homeless response and to align that plan with county and federal and state resources. You know, we do need a regional approach to this issue. We do a lot of great work in Berkeley, but this is an issue that goes beyond our borders, and we have to work with our fellow neighbors. I'm the only candidate who has the relationships, the deep understanding of the issue, and the ability to deliver a regional approach on this issue.
Thank you. Next up is Aidan.
Thank you. I also have the relationships, a deep understanding, and a perspective that's very unique towards this issue. I'm very privileged to have the opportunity for the Homeless Commission of the City of Berkeley to elect me as vice mayor. And that's, I'm sorry, not vice mayor, but vice chair. And that's because I talk to homeless people themselves. I understand their needs. And in fact, I steward land primarily with homeless people, and I've elevated their quality of life by doing that activism. And that's People's Park, a historical legacy to the Berkeley community. And I'm very lucky that our commission made a People's First Sanctuary encampment model in which I authored. And this was basically a model adopting support for unhoused people to take part in decision makings about their long-term and short-term solutions to the housing crisis. It meant that unsheltered people, public and private agencies, boards, councils, and commissioners will coordinate with all sanctuary encampments to make sure their needs are met. I'm very proud that our city manager took our resolution and started putting it into action. They started making sure that the public authority of Berkeley provided clean water, sanitation, accessible toilets, and trash removal services for the sanctioned encampment. And this was well authored before the coronavirus pandemic, so I'm happy that it took hold. Likewise, many residents who are homeless need social safety nets. We have too many elders on the street, too many pregnant and women with children who are on the street. I support funding for the Ed Roberts campus, as well as other ADA compliant housing initiatives. And I'll talk about that more if you'd like. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Wayne.
So I took the question to be asking, what can we do in the next 1 to 3 year time period? And I think there are 3 things we can do. One is we've got to stop punishing people for being poor. So things like the RV ban, trying to enforce vagrancy laws at BART stations, these things don't work. And this has happened in Berkeley over the last couple of years. Enormous amount of evidence showing that when you punish people for being poor and unhoused, it just makes the problem worse. So we would never do this under the Wayne Hsiung administration. Second thing is we have to have a long-term plan where we're using our resources wisely. So Projects like the 9th Street and University project, where the city spent $6 million to run a homeless shelter for, I think, 8 months, doesn't work. You got to have a long-term vision. You got to allocate resources effectively, be fiscally responsible with the limited resources we have, and make sure we're deploying them for the most effective purpose. And that brings me to the third point. In any efficient system, you have to find the folks who need your services most and give it to them first. And right now, what we're doing in our shelter system, we have very limited housing. We don't have enough homes. We don't even have enough shelter beds, much less long-term permanent housing for the 2,000 unhoused folks in Berkeley in any given year. And right now, it's not necessarily the most vulnerable, the folks who are suffering the most, the folks who are causing the most problems to our community, who end up in our shelters, who end up in permanent supportive housing. So we have to do some vulnerability testing on the streets, find out who are the people who are most sick, who are the people who are having the biggest mental health issues, who are causing the most problems in the community. Let's get them off the street first. And the flow through effects for the entire community will be immense.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're running about, I'm gonna say about 7 minutes behind schedule, which I think is amazing, actually. So thanks to all the candidates for doing a better job than I did when I started. We're gonna do 2 minutes of closing statements. Order is gonna be Aidan, Wayne, and Jesse. We're just shuffling through the cycle. So in case you're wondering about how we did the order. So let's start with Aidan.
Thank you. For who you elect as mayor, it's important that they understand the political process, because simply, it's important that your time and your energy and your taxpayer dollars are not wasted trying to navigate the system. As a candidate for mayor, as a UC Berkeley student, and as a commissioner in our city of Berkeley, I understand how the structure works, not only with the city auditor's department, but also with the city manager. And I have good relationships for both. Berkeley must maintain authority to improve the health and safety of all residents in our city. We can do this by protecting our environment, preserving our natural resources. I would like to invest in research in sustainable non-toxic materials, eliminating waste and pollution, as well as organic agriculture, permaculture, and sustainable forestry. Likewise, I want to increase our transportation networks. All of Berkeley must have supportive environments, and I will do this by creating, rehabilitating, and maintaining all of our public open spaces in all of our communities. We must protect and preserve rivers, streams, lakes, and bays, as well as our rock formations that you're so well known in Berkeley for. I support a comprehensive regional food policy that feeds our hungry and supports small farmers. I also support better access to fresh foods, investments in programs that specifically target businesses, schools with farm to cafeteria programs, and locally grown markets that go into hospitals and school lunch programs. I believe in the spirit of Berkeley. I believe that we can make a change. And when we have this darkest time right now, if you elect me, I will be a light for all of you. I have an 84-point platform to make sure that all of these recommendations are implemented within my first 100 days. And we know that we might not have 100 days before this national government has some type of solution. So I urge you to vote me as mayor of Berkeley, and I will serve you well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Wayne.
So Jesse's made some honestly good points about the experiences he has as a politician. And I want to tell you a little bit about my experiences. I'm not a career politician. I've never run for political office before. Honestly, until a few months ago, I probably wouldn't have imagined running for political office. But I do have the experiences I think Berkeley needs right now, because what we need is not another traditional politician. We need someone who knows how to bring change. And some of the things I've done over the last 10 years include multi-million-dollar solar financings as an environmental attorney, publishing groundbreaking climate research with Harvard's Cass Sunstein 15 years ago, arguing we need to move faster, bring a wartime mobilization against climate change, organizing thousands of activists in groundbreaking anti-corporate campaigns across the entire nation. But honestly, the most important experience I have, again, is I am a grassroots organizer. And that's what we need right now. We need someone who can bring our entire city together, who can mobilize ordinary people and help us all understand that we can do this. We can address climate change. We can become the first carbon neutral city in the nation. We can end homelessness. We can cut rents in half, but we have to work together and we have to believe in ourselves. So this campaign, if we win, is honestly not much about me. It's about the hundreds of volunteers we've mobilized. It's about the 26,000 doors we've already knocked on. Half the doors in Berkeley have been knocked on by our volunteers. It's about the 10,000 plus conversations our campaign has had. and about the hundreds of donors, most of whom have come from Berkeley, California, contrary to the Berkeley side piece that had false information, who've given us donations to the point that we've now raised more money this year than an incumbent mayor who has all the establishment credentials. So if you believe in me, maybe that's a good reason to vote for me. But honestly, the better reason to vote for me is because you believe in Berkeley and in this community. And if we have an inclusive, authentic, grassroots movement of people fighting together to stop climate change, reform the police system, and end homelessness and to solve this housing crisis, that is how we're going to make Berkeley better. Not through me, but through you.
Wow, again, perfect timing. Thank you, everybody. Let's, if everybody could, let's just do a visual.
Oh, Dave, I haven't gone.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. The paper was covering you up. My apologies. Jumped the gun. Thank you, Jesse.
Well, I'm not a career politician. I'm a career problem solver, an advocate, and I am deeply devoted to this community. I've served this community for 16 years, including 12 years on our city council. And I have brought progressive change to our city, and we are working to address some of the critical challenges facing our city, our region, and our country. And now more than ever, we need effective, experienced leadership to guide our city during these challenging times. It's an honor to serve as your mayor. Every day I work hard to represent our community's values and to address critical challenges and make Berkeley better. And I'm proud to have the endorsement, the only candidate to have the endorsement of the Sierra Club, the Berkeley Firefighters Association, the Alameda County Democratic Party, the Berkeley Democratic Club, Governor Gavin Newsom, former Secretary of Labor Robert Reich, 7 of the 8 city council members, including your representative, Sophie Hahn, former Mayor Tom Bates, the entire Berkeley School Board, our county supervisor, Keith Carson, and many other local, regional, statewide leaders in trusted organizations. And they endorsed me because of my record of progressive leadership, because they know me, they trust me, and because I've demonstrated that leadership, not just here in Berkeley, but on the regional level. So I'd be honored to have your vote to continue the progress that we're making in Berkeley. And I think now more than ever, Berkeley must show a different vision for what our country can be. And I'm proud that we've led on addressing our housing crisis, on bold action on climate change, improving our infrastructure, fiscal sustainability, and addressing our COVID pandemic. I would be honored to have your support and to continue the progress that we're making in Berkeley. Thank you for joining tonight.
Thank you, Jesse, and again, my apologies. So everyone, if you could, just a visual thank you to all these 3 candidates for not only coming to this forum, but also to speaking concisely in this sort of abbreviated and odd Zoom format. And I think you guys all excelled, and thank you very much. Part 2 is going to be District 5. I hope you all stick around if this is your district, and even if not, obviously city council people affect the entire spectrum across Berkeley. So even if you're not in District 5, I think there's lots to be said for your sticking around and sharing with us. So thank you. We're going to take a little stretch break and stand up for those who have that capacity. And we'll do a little bio break. I'm going to do some of the technical stuff of repinning candidates and that kind of stuff. Thank you again, everyone, for participating. I was just saying I pinned you so I could see you now. Thank you, everyone sticking around. We had a few people drop out, but actually a fair number. We've got about 70 people here, so I'm very excited about the number of people who are sharing with us. I just need to take the time to pin the candidates who are here. Again, I want to reiterate, tomorrow night we will be having an election forum on 3 of these city measures, FF, HH, and MM, I believe. You can go to TONA.org and there will be a link to how you can access that. Tuesday night is the school board candidate forum, and I expect a great turnout there. We'll be using the same Zoom links, so feel free to just kind of click back in on that. I also wanted to remind folks something I said at the very beginning, which is that Berkeley Mutual Aid is putting together on the 8th and the 12th 2 ballot markup parties. And the point of these are Zoom sessions where members of the community just get together and share in 60 seconds their given thoughts on a candidate or a measure. And we work through the ballot because these ballots are so long, so complicated, and easy to be overwhelmed. And we have potentially sort of an abbreviated schedule on ballot measures if you want to try to mail in your ballot by the 20th, which is, or the 23rd maybe, which is what's being recommended. So if you are interested in that, I will be sending out a link to that to everyone who's registered on this. If not, you can go to berkeleymutualaid.org and sign up there. Okay, let me go through the process of trying to find everybody I can. Okay. Todd.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. And I'm trying.
We're only 2 minutes behind schedule at this point.
Excellent. I'm going to work on changing that and making it much worse. No, just kidding. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to pin everyone. And I said I allowed to multi-pin. I'm not really sure what that means, but I'm still working on add pin. There we go. And then now, thanks everyone for hanging with me. Okay. There's Todd. Okay. Okay, so I think everyone here is viewable to everyone. I want to ask all of the candidates, let me know if you cannot see Tanya, who's the official timekeeper. All good? Okay, so a couple of things. The format will be really similar to how we handled the mayoral candidates. We're going to start in alphabetical order. With Todd Andrew, then Sophie Hahn, and then Paul Picklessimer. Am I pronouncing your name correctly, Picklessimer?
Not quite. It's actually Picklessimer, and I go by Darwin most of the time, especially
Darwin Picklessimer. Thank you.
Darwin Picklessimer.
Okay.
Don't worry,
So,
I've heard worse.
And Darwin is a late addition. I think we might be able to make an adjustment because we're not too far behind schedule. We'll see how the process goes. We're going to add him in for at least the introduction stage, and if we can, we'll try to include him in the question part as well. So we're going to start with introductions. Each of you will have 3 minutes, and we're going to go ahead and start with Todd.
Hi, David. Thanks so much for inviting me and for participating in this process with democracy. I know it's not easy setting these kinds of things up, all the new technology to get used to. I hope you're all as well as you can be. I'd be honored to earn all of your support and everyone who's on this call who lives in District 5, your vote. I just want to tell you a little bit about who I am before we get started. I grew up in a working class family in Iowa before moving to the Bay Area after graduating from college in '88 on student loans and work study income. I moved to Berkeley in 1999, so I'm a 21-year resident. Moved here to start a family after falling in love. I'm a 14-year tenant in a rent-controlled apartment on Hopkins at Monterey, right across the street from Monterey Market. I've got 2 wonderful kids who I adore and I don't know what I'd do without, who grew up through the Berkeley public schools and who recently graduated from Berkeley High. And I'm proud of my career as a realtor. For 17 years, I've been helping people move to and from Berkeley and surrounding communities and giving ethical advice and service in doing that. And even though labels aren't as important to me as the truth and results, I do consider myself to be a proud, progressive, pro-choice, pro-labor, pro-environment Democrat in the same vein as Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. I've come to really love our city. It's my hometown now, and so it kind of pains me to say that our public policy is broken, in my opinion. One of my first priorities is just going to be to shift the focus away from what I see as an ideological approach to policy, which too often, in my opinion, results in divisiveness, and more toward a creative, sort of open problem-solving mentality. And I just want to focus on results. It's amazing how we talk about inputs, what we're spending, how many people are working on something, and we don't talk about the outputs or the results. For instance, you know, affordable housing, we have not seen the number of permits we'd like to see. We haven't seen a number of things get built. And I know that there are things coming down the pike, but again, the ideological approach to it means that there's an exclusion to some degree of private resources in the housing. At least we could talk about the couple of things that I'm thinking of. As a homeless commissioner, I can tell you that on homeless, the Stair Center over here, one of the flagship endeavors of the new people in office since 2016 served 30% fewer people on an annualized basis in the first 6 months of its second year than it did in its first year. And yet we didn't hear anything about it. It was an information item on the agenda. So we just have enormous deficits too. I was shocked to find that in the Vision 2050 plan, there's not $700 million in infrastructure deficit, but about $880 million. So as we strive to overcome these hurdles and meet our new challenges, business as usual just isn't an option anymore. We've got to not just look at policing and reimagining public safety, but other departments. Thank you so much.
Okay, next up, Sophie.
Okay, can you hear me? All righty, well, thank you so much. And hello to all the wonderful District 5 constituents. 4 years ago, voters elected me to represent District 5 with new energy and vision, and I have worked hard to lift up our community, our planet, and our values. I've authored over 80 pieces of legislation and co-sponsored hundreds more and addressed thousands of constituent inquiries. 2 years ago, I was honored to be elected vice mayor by my colleagues. My goal over decades of community service and now on the city council is to make Berkeley as vibrant, visionary, and excellent as the people who live here, and to more fully realize our highest values. Because Berkeley isn't just a place for me, it's at the core of who I am and what I stand for. I grew up in District 5, and my husband and I chose to raise our family here. My parents moved from Kensington when Berkeley became the first city in America to voluntarily integrate its schools, the same year that Contra Costa elected a majority of segregationists to their school board. My father, a history professor at Cal for 50 years, and mother, a musician who has been active in civic organizations for almost 60 years, wanted to ensure that my sister and I could be part of a racially just future. I was lucky to be a student in one of the first cohorts to go K through 12 in Berkeley's newly integrated schools. And while the free speech, civil rights, and anti-war movements were in full swing, I accompanied my father to visit his conscientious objector students who were continuing their studies behind bars. I learned early on that the work we do in Berkeley and the example we set for others is important. It was during these times that my values and my lifelong commitment to Berkeley were forged. After many years serving on the boards of the Public Library Foundation, the Bancroft Library and Magnus Collection, King Middle School PTA, and local Planned Parenthood and Sierra Club chapters, as well as chairing Berkeley's Commission on the Status of Women and serving on the Zoning Adjustments Board, I was honored to be elected to the City Council in 2016. My legislative work spans a wide variety of local interests, but I've been especially focused on 5 key areas: homelessness, affordable housing, climate and environment, local business, and Berkeley basics, including fire and emergency preparedness, fiscal responsibility and good government, and parks, facilities, and infrastructure. We've just broken ground on major affordable housing projects, and we've rehoused hundreds of homeless neighbors. We're rebuilding senior and recreation centers, clearing fire fuels, expanding bike lanes, and we significantly strengthened city finances just in time for the current economic downturn.
Sorry, my timer didn't go off for some reason.
To meet urgent climate and environmental challenges, I've authored internationally acclaimed legislation to
Sophie,
reduce throwaway
time's up.
plastic. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see anybody.
Sorry.
But you can see Tanya, right?
Can you see
Now
me?
I can, but you see, if she doesn't make noise, she doesn't pop up.
Okay, gotcha,
Oh,
gotcha.
sorry.
Good to know. Okay. You might want to
So-
change your view to speaker view. I think that might help. So
Yeah, but she still has to speak to be viewed.
okay,
So I apologize for that,
okay,
barreling along, but thank you very much.
okay. Next up is Darwin.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here. I'm honored to be part of this entire process. I'm a newcomer relatively to the Bay Area. I'm born and raised in West Virginia and graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, applied that to our family roofing and construction business for many years, where we provided the best service to customers in the tri-state area. Eventually moved to the Midwest, where I worked in the Chicago suburbs, managing a produce department for Mariano's, a high volume produce department that was responsible for the lion's share of store sales every day. And since 2016, I've been here in the Bay Area. I came here to pursue opportunities in activism. Part of a grassroots animal rights network called Direct Action Everywhere. You heard from Wayne Hsiung earlier, a candidate for mayor who I'm a strong supporter of, and I'm a part of that network too. And I'm somebody who likes to work. I like to work hard. Throughout my career, I've always done exceptional work, and I've always gained the support and the appreciation and the trust of the people who I work with. My work recently has been covered in Wired Magazine, the New York Times, Washington Post, The Intercept, and a lot of different outlets where I've helped people challenge really strong and powerful systems. And I'm in this race because since coming to Berkeley in 2016, I was a bit shocked to see the up close and personal, the houseless issue that we have here. Coming from West Virginia, we're a state that has around 1,000 people in the whole state who are houseless. We're one of the poorest states in the nation. And it was just kind of perplexing that we couldn't do a better job at making sure that all our residents are housed. And since 2016, when folks like Sophie and Jesse, entered into their current positions, I think we can all see that things in Berkeley haven't gone the way we'd like them to in terms of affordable housing and unhoused folks. And I'm with Todd in the respect that I really appreciate results. And somebody who's just been in the workforce all my life, I know that if you don't produce results, you probably are going to get fired, frankly. And that's what I would like to subject myself to if you can elect me. I want to get in there and I want to work really hard and really prioritize these issues that I think we all care about. And if I don't succeed, if I do like the folks currently in office have done and not produce the results that I run on, then I'll just voluntarily step down and I'll be looking for a suitable replacement for myself, because I do believe that the city, the Bay, and the world all deserve the kind of results Berkeley can provide. I'm running in District 5, and I know that there's a lot of issues that are pressing for this area, and I want to do my best to hear from you all and represent you as best as I possibly can ongoing. And I'm going to operate under the assumption and the knowledge that I have from talking to some of you that you're all altruistic folks to an extent, and you really don't just want what's best for District 5, but you really want to use an opportunity for Berkeley to set a shining example of what the rest of the world can do, because we can do all the things here in Berkeley that we think are good, but if we don't solve climate change on a global level, we're not going to have a Berkeley in the future. So thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, we're going to move to the first question, and the order will be Sophie, Darwin, and Todd. Okay. The first question is actually a repeat of one of the questions to the mayor candidates, because we got so many questions around the North Berkeley BART development issue. And so trying to keep it super simple, what is the vision that you have for what the North Berkeley BART development should be? So again, starting with Sophie.
Well, thank you. First of all, my vision is to listen to what the community wants. So that is the first element of my vision. The second, in terms of what I might like to see there, is a brand new, beautiful neighborhood, primarily or entirely made up of affordable housing. Now that could mean affordable from very low income to moderate income, which is 120% of area median income. But I want that housing, as much of it as possible, to be protected so that we can maintain diversity, so that artists, teachers, first responders, nurses, firefighters can afford to live in Berkeley. I also want to make sure that whatever we put there harmonizes with the existing neighborhood, because we can't just drop something down that looks like it came from another planet. We need to do something that extends the neighborhood feel that surrounds the BART station. The next thing we need to do is make sure there's a lot of green space. And so I'm very committed to the parkway. And last but not least, we absolutely must ensure robust access to the BART station for the people who already ride BART. And some of them are coming to the BART station in cars. We need to have better public transit, shuttles, bikes, and multiple modes to access BART. And this time I did see the sign and my time's up.
I'm sorry it didn't go. For some reason, it doesn't seem to like Sophie. Like it's not going off for you. I don't know why.
I like it. It just wants to hear more from me.
Okay, next up, Darwin.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we heard from the mayor candidates and from Sophie, and we hear a lot of just sort of repeating themes. So it seems that people are clear about trying to prioritize parking and transportation as much as possible, and people seem to be on board with building, which is great because we obviously do need to build. So I'd like to just focus on just sort of a theory in terms of architecture that I think we should really respect in Berkeley. And that's just an idea of simplicity and minimalism, and being sure that we have a lot of units that are smaller, that don't sort of cater to the sort of luxury apartment ideas. Like the luxury apartments, of course, those are attractive to developers sometimes because they can charge higher premiums. The people who will inhabit them might have more secure income, and that's great for them. And I think it's sort of our responsibility as a city council to do our best to push for housing that is affordable by design, because it's simply built, simply maintained, constructed with green materials, reused materials when possible, and just try to help build a culture in Berkeley that really appreciates minimalism to an extent, to where places don't have a lot of ornate design and different things like that. Simple buildings are beautiful buildings. They're easier to maintain, and we can get more units in them to make better housing for all. So that's my vision, and I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you so much. Next up, Todd.
Oh, thanks, David. I am really appreciating this discussion. I think we've got some convergence here on some aspects of the process and the eventual result. I too would love to see a robust community engagement process. Unfortunately, I think we have that with the community advisory group, the CAG, that's been meeting on a regular basis, and the MOU step in the process that council undertook, that it's my understanding other communities have not undertaken. So we're really having a robust community engagement on this, which I appreciate, especially in Councilmember Kesarwani's district and all the folks who actually live down there. But it's not just important to those people that the project be as well executed as it can be. It's also important to District 5 and District 6 residents who use BART and who, as the council member mentioned, will need access. Parking's expensive, and it behooves us to maximize the extent of housing, I think, because the extent that we do that, we're going to get more affordable housing and minimize the parking to the degree possible. But we've got to ensure that individuals in District 5 and District 6 feel like they have access. They can't walk. Shuttles may be a part of it. Transportation experts have told me it's going to cannibalize AC transit service. But I think in order to make it easier for people to get there, and also to make it more comfortable for them to ride shared transportation, some kind of a shuttle as a transitional measure would be good. And then I love the idea of it being in harmony with the environment and open space. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, question number 2, the order will be Darwin, Todd, and then Sophie. So question number 2 is a brief one, which is, what are your long-term plans to protect Berkeley neighborhoods from fire?
Well, I think we've got to just look at the data on what produces the most fires in the Bay Area, and what produces, obviously, fires that could creep in from the hills when we're dealing with climate change. And I think that's the bigger issue that we've got to worry about the most, especially here as we get closer to the hills. We've been lucky that a fire hasn't ripped so far into the town in recent years, but it could happen at any time. And with that in mind, I think we need to be really smart and look at what's at the forefront of fire management, and of course, just making it easy for people to move and get away from fires, evacuate quickly. But I think that looking at the climate crisis is going to be the best thing to look at long term. And so look at the things like fossil fuels, animal agriculture, the things that contribute the most to this, sweltering planet that we're living on right now, and try to take really aggressive steps to cut that off. And that involves, putting a lot of value in being able to transport ourselves on public transportation that's electric, on improving our ability to bike around the city and to walk around the city, and to support efforts to have a moratorium on new factory farms in the state of California. Things like this, I think, can go a long way to solving a lot of our issues.
Thank you. Next up is Todd.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate this question. It's so important. Long term, I mean, of course, we're fighting climate change and have to reduce the frequency and severity of fires in general by reducing the effects of human-induced climate change. And I was really encouraged by the fact that human-induced climate change was just stated as a fact in newspaper the other day, rather than being stated as something that has some disagreement on some sides and some agreement on the others. Nice to see we're finally there. I would say vegetation management all over the city, but also particularly in the urban wildland interface in the hills. And I know there's some controversy around it, but which trees will stay and go, and the eucalyptus and all of that. But I think we have to be really clear that human safety is the first order of business, especially when we're talking about non-native species. Parking management, we talked about this in one of the forums over the last couple of weeks. We talked about it, not just a matter of egress in an emergency for members of residents of District 5 and District 6. It is also a matter of emergency vehicle access. So we've got to talk about how we manage parking and the vehicles. Sometimes I'm in the hills and I'm like, it's hard for me to get around on a normal day. And then I would say also, I think there's an effort afoot to require gas shutoff valves on homes in Berkeley. And I would support that. It already exists in Contra Costa, unincorporated Contra Costa County. And I think it's a good fire management tool. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, Sophie.
Well, thank you. And certainly as District 5 council member, I've been working very actively on this for the last 4 years. So a couple of things. First of all, we are already doing this work. I don't want anyone to think that we have not been very busy trying to reduce the fire risk. We have put Measure FF on the ballot to increase the funding available, but we already allocated an extra $1 million for vegetation management and other planning and preparation. So we're already doing a lot. We also have very strong regional collaborations. Our fire department collaborates with East Bay Regional Parks, Alameda County, La Mirinda Fire, and we are constantly doing drills, clearing vegetation, and coordinating with them to stamp out any spark that happens east of us. Vegetation and fuel reduction is the next thing. We have done a ton of fuel reduction in District 5 and throughout the city on public property. Our next big challenge is to get people to do it on their private property. And Measure FF includes money for us to have a more robust program to push people to manage their private property. Improve evacuation and warning systems. We need more planning, more drills. We had our first evacuation drill last year, and we need to open up the routes again for egress and for evacuation. Last but not least, we need to keep Alta Bates open, and I am leading the fight to do that along with our Mayor, Jesse Arreguin.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, our third and final question. The order will be Sophie, Darwin, and then Todd. So this is sort of a two-part question. One is, are you in favor of an open street program like the kind they have in Salt Lake City? which is basically one where, at least for part of the time, certain streets are closed down to vehicular traffic to encourage pedestrians and bicyclists. And then more specifically in the area of Solano Avenue here in Thousand Oaks, what do you envision in a way that we can make it a more inviting and to pedestrians, and specifically during a time of a pandemic where stores are closed to interior customers and having a space outdoors. And then specifically in relation to what we see happening right down the street in Albany, which feels like a much more robust and vibrant outdoor experience during this pandemic. So again, starting with Sophie.
Well, thank you. And I think I've already shown my commitment to all of this. So I wrote a comprehensive plan for Solano for a re-envisioning process for Solano Avenue, specifically for the purpose of enlivening it, both for commerce and for community, inspired by what happened at the bottom of Solano. So I've already written that legislation. It's been passed unanimously by the City Council, and I obtained the funding for it. Unfortunately, the funding was clawed back in the context of freezing everything to address the COVID crisis. But believe me, I'm working right now with the mayor on trying to find alternative funding. So I have a very broad vision to enliven the top of Solano Avenue, widen sidewalks, increase public space, have an outdoor stroll and cafe type atmosphere. So that's already in process. I also wrote the emergency legislation to allow outdoor dining and commerce. So that's my legislation. And that is my vision. To meet the COVID emergency, we needed that. It was my vision, and that's why I put it forward, and that's what we're doing. Do I support things like Salt Lake City? Absolutely. Not only in District 5, I'd like to see us increase the amount of protected bikeways we have throughout the city, and take much stronger action to turn our streets back to people and bikes and away from vehicles.
Sorry.
Thank you so much.
It did it again.
Next up is Darwin.
Yeah, thanks. I actually, in my activism has landed me in some legal issues where I've investigated factory farms, and some of the world's largest companies have tried to press charges for some of that work. So I've been in Salt Lake City a lot over the last few years for court dates and things like that. It's looking like it's going to have a good outcome, but I love Salt Lake City, and I love the feel of the area, to the way that people do bike around more and walk around more, do have wider streets. I would love to see more of that. Albany at the bottom is doing a great job, and I would love to see Berkeley take cues from them. I think it's going to happen culturally though. And that's like Todd, for instance, is a cyclist, and I'm a walker. I try to do 300 miles a month. I don't get to that goal every month by any means, at least 150. And I would like to see more of our leaders, to the extent that they can, really, showing people like, hey, yeah, we can bike around the city, we can make it work, and just try to promote a culture where people do walk, bike, wheel where they can go. And we just have a lot of work to do, I think, as a city to make that more accessible. So yeah, I do love I love seeing the outdoor commerce. It's sort of one thing that COVID has, shown us, is like, hey, we can do commerce outside. If we could do more commerce outside, maybe we could put more people inside. Maybe we can look at using retail spaces and different things like that to get a few people off the streets. So I'm really open to those ideas, and would love to work with a team on City Council to try to come up with the best solutions.
Thank you. Todd.
Thank you for that question. I am in line with this notion that we should have pedestrian-friendly, wheel-friendly environments. And I totally support a slow streets environment. We got this question, I should say, in another forum. And the streets, I would just urge that we not make it into a using public space for private, like creating private streets, but that we have a robust community process around which streets we select to do that. In my role on the Solano Avenue Business Improvement District Advisory Board, I was instrumental in bringing up how can we help vendors, restaurants, retail establishments, service businesses through COVID. And one of the things that we learned in conjunction with the Solano Avenue Association was that unlike some of the businesses down on the Albany end of it, our businesses are not all that interested a lot of times in having outdoor dining, for instance, just because there isn't enough volume for them to justify the cost of hiring staff to service it. I will say on the Solano Avenue revitalization plan, I appreciate the efforts that have been made by the council member in that regard. And my comments added to that when it was brought to the Solano bid was that we should look at a pedestrian plaza and be sure at every step of the process to take into account the impact it's going to have on the neighborhood as well. So that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have 2 minutes left for closing statements. The order will be Todd, Sophie, and Darwin. I would ask that you consider taking this time to maybe field a question that you haven't been asked that you wish you were asked rather than a standard closing statement. I think you guys did a great job on the introduction, sort of letting everyone know where you are. People can read candidate statements and that kind of thing. So take that kind of opportunity if you have the capacity. So go ahead, Todd.
Okay, David, thanks again, everybody, for inviting me and for setting this up. I know it takes a lot of work to get used to the process, to organize the candidate cats, so to speak. Those who know me well know me that I'm pretty fiercely independent, but I'm proud to have the endorsements of former council member Daryl Moore from District 2, Lori Capitelli from District 5, former Zoning and Adjustments Board Chair Christiana Tiedemann, current Public Works Commissioner and Solar Industry Specialist Sachu Constantine, and Libby Lee Egan, the founder and organizer of North Berkeley Now. I'm running because, and this is going to be more of a standard statement, David, if I've got time, maybe I'll throw in something else. But I'm running because I think if we believe government can do good things, which most of us do, I think most of us are probably pretty progressive or consider ourselves to be, then we need to have good government in order to meet the challenges that we've got to meet. And there's so many of them. I mentioned one of them earlier in my opening statement, the huge unfunded infrastructure liabilities, unfunded pension liabilities, the fact that the homelessness problem persists. I mean, there are just a ton. So we've got to make sure government's doing what it can. So I think we need a mindset of flexible, creative problem solving to make sure we're not eliminating options, but bringing more options to the table. So that's what I intend to do. Thanks again for inviting me, and please be kind to each other. All right, and stay safe.
Thank you. Next up is Sophie.
Well, thank you. I'm very proud to be endorsed by the Sierra Club, the Democratic Party, the League of Conservation Voters, California Nurses Association, Berkeley Firefighters, SEIU, Mayor Jesse Arreguin, Councilmember Wengraf, Councilmember Harrison, other council members, State Superintendent Tony Thurman, Alameda County Supervisor Keith Carson, State Controller Betty Yee, and hundreds and hundreds of community members. So it's been an incredible honor to work with you these past 4 years, and I'm very, very motivated to continue. A couple of topics I would have loved to talk about a little more is homelessness and affordable housing. I am deeply dedicated and have worked very hard to change the paradigm around homelessness so that we move from what I call homeless maintenance to a system where we are rehousing the homeless. I am very proud that we have rehoused almost 300 homeless people in just 2.5 years. Affordable housing, you need the money. 2018 was our first opportunity to go to you for that money. You very generously gave it to us. We have $135 million now that we can leverage 5 times. We are starting the process of building more than $500 million of affordable housing here in Berkeley. I was breaking ground on a senior affordable housing project just on the edge of District 5 this week. Almost 40 units of affordable housing for formerly homeless seniors and other low-income seniors. So, you know, it's easy to say you want to do things. We've been doing them, and I've been doing them. And I'm very proud of the leadership that I've been able to take working closely with Mayor Arreguin and with my council colleagues to make real progress on the most important issues facing our community. I would be very honored to have your vote again and look forward to working with you the next 4 years.
Thank you very much. And I've got everyone covered this time. I hope last time I cut things off a little short, so I want to make sure I'm doing it right. Thank you all. If we could, just a visual applause for everybody who came and showed. Oh, I did do it.
You did. You did the
God.
same thing. You forgot, Darwin.
Jesse, if you're
Hi.
still on the call, don't feel bad. It happens.
Yeah, there you go. I had to do it just to even it out.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, Darwin, please.
No problem, David. I like the question that was asked of the mayoral candidates about ways we might tangibly change policing and the police force in Berkeley. And considering that Berkeley has issues that it needs to address in terms of there are shootings occasionally, there are violent crimes occasionally. We are, as a city, doing better than a lot of other cities in that area. I think that gives us a bit of freedom to really try to do some new things that could help change what policing is in the entire United States. Some things I would like to do would be to decrease drastically police spending on things like weaponry, whether it's non-lethals or even firearms themselves, and increase spending on things to help keep our officers safer. I'd love to see our officers feel safe because they have maybe ballistic helmets or really top of the line just protection from when things do go wrong, because it can be a scary job. I'd also like to see our police just transform the entire way they look and act. It sounds like a small thing, but police kind of dress in all black, like they look like something out of, Star Wars or something sometimes, like Darth Vader or something. I'd like to see our police wear some nice light green uniforms that let them be comfortable and not look so threatening. And I'd like to train them to interact with a smile and sort of drop kind of the hard attitude that they have to have sometimes, maybe, to feel safe. I think that there's just a lot of room for radical change and to imagine the future that we want, and right here in Berkeley to start building it. So I really would love to be a part of that. I'm really grateful for the service of everybody on City Council. Of course, I'm critical of some of the outcomes, but I don't doubt for a second that the effort has been there. And I think it's a beautiful thing when people can come together to serve their cities. And I would just really love to be a part of that. If I could earn your vote, I would appreciate it so much. And my website's darwinforcitycouncil.com. You could check it out and you can reach out to me if you have any questions or thoughts. I'm a very outside of the political establishment, so I don't have a lot of endorsements, just Lil B the Bass God, Bay Area rap legend. And that's all I got for that. And I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And again, my apologies for cutting you off. Thank you, all of you, for taking the time to show up, for caring about Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association, for the city of Berkeley as a whole. And I think everyone does agree that Berkeley is sort of this kind of beacon, not in California, to the rest of the country. So it's a big ripple effect. So thank you. A reminder, I'm just going to sort of wrap it up, but a reminder that tomorrow night is that we have 3 measures that are going to be discussed by pro and con candidates. That's FF, HHMM. I'm looking for George to give me a nod. Yes, I did it right. And then the school board candidates on Tuesday night. And just a reminder, Tuesday night is the odd one off. We're doing it at 7 o'clock. These other ones tonight and tomorrow nights will be 7:30. So it's a little bit off on the timing. It's the same Zoom link, same Zoom channel. So join us for that. And then again, the ballot markup party measure that is being hosted by Berkeley Mutual Aid will be taking place on the 8th and the 12th. So if you want to join that, that would be great as well. Thank you all so much for coming. If you're interested in being a part of Thousand Oaks Neighborhood Association, we have spots on the board. And obviously, if you're not a member, you get a newsletter delivered to every single home in Thousand Oaks and the stores as well. And there's a coupon on the back, send it in. We have a PayPal on TONA.org. Thank you all. Thank you for coming. Good night. Be safe. Thank you.